Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. Here we are, we're working on the 2007 Kawasaki Ninja. Right when you think you're almost done with the build, something else comes up, and which is fine. I want this bike to be, everything to be sorted before really putting it on the road. So one thing we have to do, we developed a fork seal leak over here on the left side. I don't know if you can see it. But I want to go ahead and change these fork seals out, but to do these fork seals I need to raise the front end of the bike. There's not a good way to do that on this bike because of the way the exhaust runs down. It runs down and runs right underneath the lower part of the motor, the oil pan, everything. So the first thing I'm going to do is remove the exhaust and remove the exhaust, and then we'll move on to removing the front. It's very cold out here today, so I'm gonna have to run the heater, and so I'm probably not going to record every step, but I'll try to show you every step visually when I'm done doing it. I definitely recommend a manual for this, but sometimes the manual's good to follow, and then I know there's probably other videos out on doing this, but I'm trying to document as much of this build as I can. And sometimes one person's video may not cover something that somebody else's does, and it may help you. So hopefully this will be helpful. And so let's get started. The first thing I'm going to do is take off the exhaust. I'm going to get that off. I think I covered that before in one of the other videos on this build, because we have taken that off in the past. So I'm going to take the exhaust off first and get ready to jack this front end up and get it stable so it doesn't move anywhere while we're working on the fork seals. Alright, I've got the exhaust off. It's 13mm bolts, 4 of them, that holds this exhaust on. And this has the aftermarket FM exhaust, and pretty easy to come off. So got that off. So we're going to get this out of the way, and what I'm going to do is I've got a Harbor Freight transmission jack, I'll show it to you in a minute, that I'm going to slide underneath of the motor here, put a couple boards underneath of it so it's not metal against the oil. And I'm going to try to get on these brackets here. I left these brackets here on purpose to use as jack points if need be. So I'm going to try to get something under it so it hits on both of these brackets and it's not right on the oil pan. That's my goal here. And then we're going to try to jack the front of this up, get the bike off stable, and then we'll go from there. But first, before I do that, actually, I'm going to go through, and unfortunately I got to remove all of the front stuff that I've already done, or at least loosen this up so that the fork can slide out of it. But I'm going to go through here and break all these bolts loose. The cap here on top, the bolts here that hold it on, so these clamp bolts, and I'm just going to break loose everything that has to come off. So these bolts, so when I have it in the air, it's not kind of swaying back and forth if it needs to. I'll just have everything broken loose, take it all off, slide it all off at one shot. And like I said, I'm going to try to leave this on, just try to loosen up one side at a time to see if it'll slide through it and kind of shortcut it a little bit. But I don't want to have to take everything off that I've spent all this time putting on if it can stay in one place and it's not going to go anywhere. So we'll have to take the fender off and brake calipers, stuff like that. But I'm going to do both fork seals while I have it off. I recommend doing it in pairs, but I will probably only video one side because it's the same on both sides. So that's kind of what I was thinking. So start breaking bolts loose first, and then we'll be back in a minute. All right, there's the transmission jack that I have underneath of this. And like I said, I've got the wood blocks on those brackets, not on the oil pan. So what I did was I've loosened all these bolts, and I just need to loosen up these cap bolts. I wanted to put support underneath of the bike so it didn't drop down when I loosen all these bolts. So I'm going to break these caps loose before I start jacking it up and taking things apart and taking the front wheel off, things like that. But I have all the bolts broke loose. The size of the Allen here for this axle, this is a 14 millimeter. And then I think a 6 millimeter were the bolts here and here, the Allen bolts there. And then 12 millimeter for the caliber bolts. And so we're gonna roll on through, break those caps loose. I tied up my caliber so it's not just hanging by the hose here. The other one is long enough to just sit there on the bench. So I think we're good to go. All right, guys. I used a 7/8 inch wrench to loosen the top cap. So now that it's all loose, you should just be able to wiggle. Kind of hard to do one-handed. Wiggle your fork around, twist it some, and it should start coming down. This headlight might be holding it up here, so I'm gonna have to use both hands to do this, but you just kind of wiggle it around and you should be able to get the fork right out of the triple clamp. All right, so I have the fork off now. It's an 8 millimeter bolt down at the bottom of this fork. I just went through and just loosened that a little bit because I just want to make sure that that will all come apart. So once I drain the oil and everything out of this front fork, I just want to make sure I can take everything apart to change the seals. This is the left side that wasn't leaking. Like I said, I'm going to do both while it's off. So next I'm going to take the cap all the way off and take the parts out of the inside of that. I'll show you what those are so we can clean those up and change this fork oil. Okay, this is why it's important to loosen this cap before you take it out of the triple tree, is because if you try to take it off and loosen it up, the whole thing will just spin. So you got to make sure you loosen this cap up while it's still clamped down, because you don't want that just spinning on you. So I'm going to, all right, this is not the best angle, but hopefully you can see what I'm doing. I'm just taking the 7/8 inch wrench, holding the fork tube, and taking this cap off. And it is kind of spring loaded just a little bit. I mean, it's the other forks I've done, it's not a lot of pressure on there where it's just going to go pop and sail across the room, but I like to keep my hand on the top of the cap. There we go, got it off. And you got your cap here. And there should be some more parts down in here. You got your collar right here. I didn't realize that it slid down a little bit. Let me grab some towels. So here's the collar that goes in there. I tell you what, this actually looks really clean. I bet this one has been done before, if I had to guess, because this fork oil looks new, which I have done some before and they've just been totally disgusting inside. Like I said, this bike only has, what was it, 12,000 miles on it, I think, which is not much. All right, so we got the collar out. Don't want to damage that. And you should be able to push your fork down a little bit. Let's see how much further it'll go, because I know there's more parts in there. Can't quite reach them. But yeah, this fork oil, I mean, it looks brand new in this. Wow. So I'm going to take this over and pour it out in the container. Bring you down here so you can hopefully see how clean this fork oil is. Like I said, it looks brand new. If you can see it pouring out of there, super clean. All right, so now you have your washer and then your spring. So who knows, this fork seal could have been leaking on this side, and the previous owner may have just replaced one side. because the other side may not have been leaking at the time. All right, so I'm going to let this drain for a few minutes. So I'm going to pause the video. All right, while that's draining, I'm going to go ahead and remove this Allen here. And it is an 8mm. Now, I want to do it carefully because there's the cylinder and everything inside. I don't want it to go just sliding out and splashing in the oil. So we're going to put my hand over this as I'm loosening it. The last few I've done, this is a very long bolt. There it is. The cylinder just fell out in my hand. Or the cartridge. So here's what you've got inside. You've got this cartridge, a spring, and a seal here at the top. So we're going to clean that off. All right, the next thing we're going to do is very carefully with a small pick, we're going to pull this dust seal up. And the reason we're going to do it very carefully is because I thought my kit was coming with new dust seals and it didn't. So I'm going to reuse these. They're in good shape. So I'm just going to set this over with the other parts. And now we have a little spring clip in here. There's a little spring clip. I don't know if you can see it right in here. We're going to try to pull that spring clip out. We're going to be very careful. You don't want to do any damage to this, to your fork tube. So be very careful with it. And you don't want to lose this spring. So I'm going to work that out. Let's see if I can get you back in position here. So yeah, here's the spring clip is out there. And what I like to do is kind of visually look and see how far down your seal is seated. Okay, now what we're going to do is we've got everything out, the spring clip and everything, so now we're going to just pull up in the fork and it's out. All right, so here's our seal. That's the lower part where you can see it has a little bit of an opening. Goes down that direction right there. So there we go. All right. All right, next what we're going to do, we're just going to put some of the fork seal oil around this fork seal. And, and the fork seal goes down with the opening down. So we're going to slide this on very carefully. And we're going to slide it down in the groove as far as we can push it down by hand. And then I had to kind of make a seal pusher. And what I did was I got a piece of PVC pipe. This is an 1.5 inch PVC pipe. I had to cut a groove down the middle to open it up because it was just too tight. So we're going to see if we can fit this over the pipe and get it to slide down enough in there. And then we're going to get a hammer. I'm going to use this rubber hammer so I can hammer on the top part of it, hopefully even, and push the seal down. Keep my pipe over the seal. Think it's in there all the way. A little bit more. All right, looks like it's in there all the way. So now we pull the pipe out and just spread it. And there we go. Good to go. All right. So next we just have to put the clamp on, or the little clip, the dust boot, and then we'll be ready to slide the internals back in. All right, so we have the seal in. Now we're going to put the clip in. Oops. All right, looks like I don't have the seal in there far enough for the clip to clip in. So no big deal. We're going to just press it down a little bit more. Looks like it might need just a hair more. Alright, looks good. Let's see if it clips in. Yep, that did it. Pretty sure. Yep. So it's got the clip seated in there. Seal is in place. So now we need to put the dust seal on. Same thing with the dust seal. I'm just going to put a little bit of oil on the inside of the dust seal so it'll slide into place. And that's in place. So now we've got the internals to drop in. And I cleaned out the inside of the fork tube really well with some brake clean and stuff, and let it sit so it's dried up, so it's nice and dry in there. Looks like that should slide pretty good. Alright, so now we have the cartridge to put in, and we're just going to let that slide down. I'm going to actually loosen this up, just clamp up a little bit, because I don't want to just drop it. I want it to slide nice and easy in there. There we go. It's in. Clamp this back down. Oops, sorry about the wiggling. All right. So, what did I do with my... Oh, right here in front of me. I got the Allen, and I'm just going to feed it back up through there, and hopefully it catches and tightens up. All right, I just have it snugged up right now. So let me check the torques on that. All right. Next, we put the spring in. So here's the spring. We're going to drop that in. So a little dirt right there on the threads. That spring in. And then the washer in. Make sure the washer drops down straight, which this one didn't. Now it's in there straight. And what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to put the cap on for now and try to tighten this up some so it'll put some tension on the spring so I can torque that bottom Allen down there at the bottom. And I did take that back out and put some blue Loctite on it. I'd forgotten to do that. I don't know if you can see up here where I'm putting this cap back on. But we need to put some tension on that bolt so it'll stop spinning down there. And hopefully this will put enough tension on it. And then we'll take this cap back off. We don't want to really tighten it up real tight to put the fluid in. Let's see if it works. Here it in there, still spinning. Alright, be right back. Alright, I got the bottom bolt torqued to 22 foot-pounds. What I had to do, if you can imagine this, is flip the fork upside down so that this part here was on the ground. Put pressure down from my weight on it and then torque the bolt at the same time. The bolt is underneath of here and got it torqued to 22 foot-pounds. So now we're going to take the cap back off. I have to look at the manual to see how much fluid goes in it, and we should be ready to put fluid back in this thing. Alright, so I added 489 milliliters to this, and what I did was I pumped it a few times up and down until I didn't hear any more air swishing around. Let's see if I can move this camera up. And as you can see, the collar's back in, or the spacer. Now I'm going to fit the cap back on. And tighten it down some, as tight as we can get it right here with our hand while it's not in the triple tree. Alright, so now we have this ready. Oops, and we're going to put this back on the bike. Okay, here's the left fork out of the bike, and you can see all the fluid that's leaking right here on the fork seals. And this is super dangerous. If this fork oil were to run down on your brakes while you're riding, you're going to lose half of your front brakes because the left side's not going to get any pull from your pads, and you're going to be in bad shape if you go flying into a corner. So always check your fork seals. I'm going to do this one the same way I did the other one, so I'm not going to video it. But you know, definitely check your fork seals. It's very important. Don't neglect those. And so I'm going to go ahead and do this one and get it ready to slap back on the bike, and we'll have some more to come after that. All right, I have the forks back in. I measured the distance that I had in here between the tops back to the right spot. Now I'm going to torque these down to 15 foot-pounds. And the lower ones to 15 foot-pounds as well. That was really loose. So I'm going to torque both sides down to 15 foot-pounds, and then we'll get ready to put the front wheel back on and the calipers and all that. All right, get the wheel back on. I greased the axle up some, put it in, torqued it to 80 foot-pounds, torqued this front clamp bolt here to 25 foot-pounds. So now the next thing to do is put the calipers on, and then we'll be ready to put the fender on and get this thing back down, and should be done with the fork seals. It wasn't too bad. It was a pretty easy job. So we're going to put the calipers on next. All right, guys, putting the front end back together. Just want to show you this real quick, what I like to do on my front brakes. Just like to get a little bit of copper anti-seize on there and put that on each of the bolts. Especially if you live in a humid climate or wet climate, just to keep those bolts easy to get out the next time you have to change your pads or whatever you may be doing, changing your front wheel, what have you. Just to make it easier to get off. I do that on a lot of my bolts. I don't always show it on camera, but I like for everything to come off easy when I need to take it off. So I'm going to torque all these down, and then we'll get ready to put the front fender on. I have to look up the torque specs on these. I don't remember what the torque specs were on these brake calipers. Okay, I've torqued all the bolts down to 25 foot-pounds for these front caliper bolts. So now we're going to put the fender on. All right, the last thing I have to do is put the exhaust back on. So I'm going to put the exhaust on and torque it down, and that's going to be it for this video. I think I'm going to clean up a little bit in here while I have the exhaust off and out of the way. So I'm going to clean up a little bit, and then I'll be back in a minute. All right, guys, I have the exhaust back on, so my job here is complete. Got the bike lowered back down to the lift. I've got a couple more things I'm going to do to it, but I think we're just about done with this build. I hope you liked it. Please like, subscribe, share, follow, all that fun stuff. We're going to have more to come on this bike.